Next, we have a presentation from the Laguna Beach Historical Society.
Good evening, Honorable Council staff and our town citizens. You know, on the tail of our last program, which ended at the entrance of our new promenade, a thought occurred that it would be a good idea to poke around town and see what things look like through the eyes of Joseph Kleitsch, who was one of the two artists featured in the previous two programs. Next. More than all the rest of our artists in town, he is the one artist who painted by far the largest number of canvases in the immediate downtown area, as seen in this map. And you can see in that inset inside that black circle, there are about 16 paintings painted in the immediate downtown area. Next. The map itself was developed for the Irvine Museum's fabulous book, Joseph Kleitsch, A Kaleidoscope of Color, which was published about 10 years ago. Next. So let's start by walking down Ocean Avenue. As we approach Main Beach, here's what the whirlwind of activity looked like in between the passageway that may have been between the ballroom and the bathhouse around 1929 and 1930. This is a pretty rare plein air painting for Laguna because it has so many people in it. Many of our plein air artists didn't feature people in their landscapes. In this particular case, the painting almost looks like it's the scene out of Casbah. Just if you have a time to study it a little bit, see how scantily clothed many of the people are. One person on the left is in a toga almost. It was more of a bohemian looking thing, which I think probably somewhat distinguished us from what things were like on Balboa Peninsula, but who knows. Next. And then from that spot, we step out onto the sand and we have Kleitsch's view that widens to show us a Sunday in Laguna Beach in 1929 on an overcast day. I'm going to leave these on just a little bit longer so people actually have time to see the paintings. Next. And then as we walk up the beach to the foot of today's Broadway, we step back in time even further to 1923 to see that there is no Broadway. There's a creek, Laguna Creek, flowing into the ocean, with the backs of the buildings on Ocean Avenue on the right side of the canvas. See a little wooden footbridge about in the middle of the canvas. In those days, as was typical all up and down the coast of California, whenever there was an original ranch or wagon road, they had to swing way far inland to cross the creek because the creeks were usually narrower, and then come back out. That was the case in Laguna Canyon, Aliso Canyon, even in Big Sur. Next. Then, where we're going to go is drift a bit up coast and then come back and circle around the backside of downtown and saunter on down as far as Three Arch Bay, and then circle back up the beach to get to the heart of downtown in the next program, part 2. Here we see Kleitsch's view of Laguna coastline in 1921. The arroyo in the foreground, everybody, you'll get a kick out of this, is Boat Canyon, where the Riddle Field and the Pavilions Market are currently sitting, right at the bottom of the painting. The houses in the foreground are still standing and beautifully restored. And the large eucalyptus grove in the center of the canvas is where Laguna Art Museum and Victor Hugo's / Las Brisas are located today, the same spot from which the old Laguna Pier jutted out onto Bird Rock. Next. And this is the painting that helped Laguna become the only city in the entire United States to be declared a National Historic Landscape by the National Park Service, and it's easy to see why. And the book on that subject is the inset on the right, available at bookstores in town and the Art Museum. Next. Okay, here we're looking through one of the arches in Three Arch Bay's Whale Island. This title is a bit of a misnomer because we know that the place called Arch Beach was the separate unincorporated community situated between Calliope Street and Victoria Beach with its own post office. I was given the art detective assignment to straighten out which arch was which because one of Kleitsch's other paintings had a very similar title. Next. And then we start working our way back towards town. For this peak, looking down on Aliso Beach and Camel Point, when we see the new 1926 highway, just paved with one lane in either direction. You can see the early houses on Camel Point Drive on the bluff to the right. And the big white house out on the tip of Camel Point is not today what we would call the location of the Gucci mansion. That white house that you see was actually out at the far end of Camel Point Drive. And it was owned by my first neighbors in Laguna who lived at Carmelita and Calliope, bought that house and moved to it. It was Jim and Ann Campbell. Jim was an inventor and happened to own the patent for the electric coffee percolator, which was still a relevant household device in those days. Next. And almost anywhere along the way up the coast, as far as Sleepy Hollow, the scene could have looked like this. Modest cottages perched along the bluffs amidst towering eucalyptus that provided shade. And speaking of shade, parenthetically, when the Sisters of St. Joseph took over South Coast Medical Center from the Adventists, some of us may recall that the hospital conducted a systematic survey of family health, interviewing 419 households randomly throughout town. Now, what was by far statistically the most prevalent medical condition? Skin cancer. It's a no-brainer, right? That's where the need for shade comes in. And that will be the end of part one, and we'll have 2 more parts on Joseph Kleitsch in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. It's definitely the highlight of our council meetings. And I'd like to remind everybody that this tradition was the idea of Alex Renagi while he was mayor, and greatly appreciated. Thanks for